You know how I have this PC? Garbage. Intel i5 11600KF? Pfft. RTX 3070? Pathetic. 16GB of RAM, 1TB of storage? Not good enough. This PC was built almost a year ago. It's old and dusty. In all seriousness though, it can't handle my workloads as well as I would like it to, so today we're gonna build a new one. I looked for more or less the best consumer hardware and ended up with these components. The i9-13900K, the Asus TUF RTX 4090, the ROG Strix C790F, 2 DDR5 RAM modules from G.Skill for a total of 64GB, one Samsung 990 Pro 2TB M.2 SSD, one Samsung 870 QVO 8TB SATA SSD, a 360mm NZXT Kraken water cooler, a Corsair 1000W power supply, and to house it all I got the NZXT H7 Flow mid-tower case. Oh, and an extra case fan. The case only comes with 2 fans. To start off, I unboxed the motherboard. Originally, I planned on getting the Asus ROG Maximus C790 Hero, but I realized that's a bit of a waste of money. So I got the ROG Strix Z790F instead. The Z790E was also an option, but it's more expensive, and the Z790F was better suited. On this motherboard, the top PCIe slot is a Gen 5. The board supports up to 4 sticks of DDR5 RAM, has 4 PCIe Gen 4 M.2 slots, and 4 SATA ports. There's also more than enough USB, and it supports Wi-Fi. Now that we've got the motherboard unboxed, we're gonna need our central processing unit. I chose the Intel i9-13900K because it's basically the best CPU you can get without spending thousands on an AMD Threadripper. Perfect for running all of my poorly optimized scripts. It comes with very fancy packaging, looks like the silicon wafer that the CPU is made from. Time to stick it in the motherboard socket. Pull up the retention lever and the socket cover, drop in the CPU, give it a little wiggle, and yeah, it's in. Despite what people say about needing to be extra careful, this was the easiest part of building a PC. Next up, we've got the RAM. I chose the G.Skill DDR5 64GB 5600MHz kit for various reasons. For this build, we need DDR5 because the motherboard only supports DDR5, but we want the best and latest tech for the build anyway. Eventually, I may want to have 128GB of RAM at my disposal, so the 32GB sticks are perfect because they leave room for an upgrade. Having a lot of RAM is ideal for editing long live streams into videos. Lastly, I chose the 5600MHz kit because the CPU only officially supports up to 5600, but I also want to find a nice balance between speed and latency. This kit has lower latencies than other kits with the same speed, like those from Corsair. I did my best to avoid colorful lights for this build, but oh well, we've got RGB on the RAM. Sticking in the RAM was not as easy as in all the YouTube videos. I was far more concerned about breaking something when installing the RAM than when installing the CPU. It worked out okay though. The RAM is clicked in. Next up, the storage. For the M.2 slot, I got the latest Samsung 990 Pro 2TB SSD. It has a read speed of 7450 MB per second and a write speed of 6900 MB per second. Perfect for accessing storage through gaming or video editing, where high speed makes for a smoother experience. This SSD uses PCIe Gen 4, which may not be as fast as Gen 5, but the M.2 slots on the motherboard I chose only support Gen 4. I could have chosen the Z790E motherboard to accommodate one PCIe Gen 5 SSD, but the bandwidth of the graphics card is halved when there's an SSD in slot 1, and that seemed like a big reason to me to get the Z790F. To install the SSD on this board, you first have to unscrew one of the heatsinks, then pull off a sticker, slot in the SSD, and press it down at the back. This motherboard comes with a so-called Q-latch, which allows you to just turn it to keep the SSD in place, rather than screwing it down. Pull off the sticker on the heatsink's thermal pad, screw down the heatsink, and voila, it's installed. Next up, we're gonna prepare the CPU cooler. For this build, I got the NZXT Kraken 360, a 360mm radiator with 3 120mm fans. We've got a high-end CPU and GPU, so we'll need a lot of cooling. The Kraken should do the trick. I considered getting the pricier Kraken 360 Elite, but I found out that its cooling abilities and noise production are no better than the non-elite version. Alright, for the cooler prep, we gotta line up the 3 fans on the radiator with the cables facing in the right direction to hide them in the case. We lay them out and screw them in. Let's just take this moment to appreciate the sleek black look of the cooler. None of that silly RGB. For now, we can put it aside for later. Let's unbox the case. We're gonna open it up and deal with the case fans before doing anything else. As you can see, the case only has 2 fans, one at the back and one at the front. And would you look at that nice cable management area. The case has a shroud to hide the power supply and all the cables that will go at the bottom, but it also has these cable channels and straps that make it easy to keep the cables tidy. We'll unbox the third fan that I bought, remove the rear fan in the case, and then screw them both to the front. Then we route all the cables to the back where they will be hidden. Next, we put the motherboard with the CPU, RAM and M.2 SSD into the case. This motherboard has a built-in I/O shield to make life a little bit easier. Then we screw the motherboard into the case. Once that's done, we can unbox the power supply. Nothing special, it's just the thing that powers all the other parts. I got a 1000 watt power supply from Corsair, it's the RM1000X 2021 edition. The build probably only needs 850 watts, but I had originally planned on getting a different graphics card that needed more power. The power supply came with a lot of cables to plug into the various computer components, but we won't need all of them. We've got one for the motherboard, two for the CPU, two SATA power cables for the SSD and the cooler, and I bought a separate cable because the graphics card needs a special 600 watt cable. These are pretty easy to plug in since the power supply says what to put where, but they also have very distinct sizes. Then we stick the power supply with all the cables attached into the bottom of the PC. It didn't fit at first, so the hard drive cage needed to be removed to make space for the cables. We don't need that anyway. Then we screw the power supply into the back of the case and move the cables to roughly where they need to be. The motherboard can already be plugged in and so can the CPU. Now let's unbox that other Samsung SSD. This little thing can store 8 whole terabytes of data. It's considerably slower than the SSD that we installed earlier though. Perfect for storing bulk data that won't be accessed that frequently or where read and write speeds aren't too important. In combination with the 2 terabyte M.2 SSD, this PC will have a whopping 10 terabytes of storage. To install the SATA SSD, we need to unscrew this 2.5 inch drive bay, line it up with the back of our SSD and screw it on. Once it's screwed on tight, we need to plug in the SATA power cable which goes to the power supply and the SATA data cable which goes to the motherboard. Then we can screw it back onto the case. Next we're removing the top of the case to install the CPU cooler. Just stick it in there above the motherboard and screw it into the case. Then I put the back plate on the back of the motherboard and screw in the standoffs for the pump. The pump has thermal paste pre-applied, so we can just stick it on and screw it down. Now that that's out of the way, we can connect up those pump cables for the fans and stuff to the motherboard and power supply. And connect up all the other stuff like the case fans and the case USB ports to the motherboard too. Finally, it's time for the big boy, the GPU. This is the best consumer graphics card on the market, the RTX 4090. We have here the Asus TUF Gaming NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4090 OC Edition. This is a big graphics card. It's only gonna occupy 2 slots in the back of the case though, so let's screw those open. Then we slot in the gigantic graphics card and push until it clicks, followed by screwing the screws back into the case through the graphics card. Since this is such a big heavy GPU and we don't want it breaking under its own weight or pulling on the motherboard, we put this little GPU holder here. Just got to plug it in now with the cable we connected to the power supply earlier. I did my best to keep the cables at the back neat. It doesn't look great, but it probably would have been 10 times worse if it weren't for the cable channels with Velcro ties. And there it is. This is now a PC. Hopefully it's a functional PC. Moment of truth. Yes, it's all lighting up. And we're in. I have built a computer. Unfortunately, Windows wasn't installed until the evening. I kept getting an error when trying to install it, but we figured it out in the end. The next day, I realized I now know how PCs work. So I decided to open up an older PC and take a look inside. This is the first PC that I used for my live streams. That wasn't even that long ago. Look how small it is in comparison to the new one. Anyway, in that PC, there was some garbage hardware, but it had a decent SSD in it. So why not take it out and stick it in my new PC? The SSD had acceptable read and write speeds, and it has 240 gigabytes of space. Not bad. Now for those of you that are interested, I have some benchmark results. I tested the previous PC and the new PC on 3DMark and Cinebench. There it is then, my PC has been replaced by this new beast of a computer. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Big thanks to all of my donators for supporting the channel and helping make this possible. Goose out!